What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time to give you my college football playoff projections heading into week number 10 of the 2023 college football season. We have officially now 4 weeks to go until the regular season ends, and now we are going to give you my playoff projections here for the first weekend of the month of November. And usually the month of November is usually the time where upsets start to happen. And for the rest of these playoff projections, we're now going to make some predictions on the teams, if they're going to win out, or also in the regular season when they're going to beat their rivals or anything like that. But we had the playoff rankings come out a couple days ago. We saw Ohio State was number 1. We saw Georgia was number 2, Florida State at number 3, and then Michigan was number 4. And then, of course, and then Washington was number 5. So the top 5 looked like that from a couple days ago. And again, I disagreed with a lot of the playoff rankings from a couple days ago. And again, if you have not seen my playoff reaction, go back and watch that video from a couple days ago. But we're going to give you my playoff projections here for week number 10. And again, I give you my top 4 teams here, pretty much based off of their performances week by week, and also how they've been playing this year. So let's get right into it with my playoff projections here. And here is the bracket once again for the playoff. Again, the number 1 versus number 4 seeded matchup will be the Sugar Bowl. Then the number 2 versus number 3 matchup will be the Rose Bowl. So these are the playoff semifinal matchups this year for the bowl games. Let's start with my number 1 seed here. My number 1 seed is still going to be Georgia. I still think Georgia is the most dangerous team in the country, even though they have looked inconsistent at times, but they were very dominant this past weekend against Florida in Jacksonville. That was a very dominant performance. And I think Georgia is going to win out for the rest of the year. I don't really see them losing to Missouri on Saturday. They got Ole Miss coming up still. They got Tennessee coming up. The most likely game that I could see them losing to is Tennessee. Tennessee is a road game, very tough place to play in Knoxville. And then, of course, you got Ole Miss at home, which Ole Miss has a very high-powered offense. But I got Georgia going 12-0 and then 13-0 with a win over the, SEC championship. It depends on who they play. It could be either Alabama or LSU. I think we'll decide that on Saturday. But I think Georgia is going to win out and be the number 1 seed, and plus they'll have like a good resume at the end of the year. They'll have like 3 top 25 wins against Tennessee. They'll have wins over Missouri, and then, of course, they'll have the win over Ole Miss in that weekend as well. So I got Georgia here still as my number 1 seed. I've been having them at my number 1 seed ever since the beginning of the season. So I know Georgia has not looked good at times, but I think this is still a really good Georgia team. And again, they were that Georgia team from this past weekend. Will they be that same Georgia team that we saw from this past weekend, or will we see the inconsistency from Georgia for this weekend? We'll find out on Saturday. But that is my number 1 seed. My number 2 seed for me is going to be Michigan. I do have Michigan, beating Ohio State in the regular season as of right now. That is my prediction. That is a really tight game there to really call, because both of those teams do play at the end of the regular season. And, that game pretty much decides maybe the Big Ten East title, and it's also going to decide maybe who that number 2 seed will be in the playoff. And either way, if Ohio State or Michigan make the in the Big Ten championship, they're not going to play like a really good team in the Big Ten championship. So it's very possible that we could see Michigan undefeated and go 13-0. If Michigan goes undefeated at the end of the year, go 12-0, beat Ohio State, that would be a good boost on their resume, and then they win their conference championship. They'll likely be number 2 here, but if Ohio State wins, goes undefeated, they'll be here at number 2 for me. But I got Michigan as of right now, beating Ohio State in the regular season matchup. But again, they got Penn State coming up, a couple weeks from now, so that will be a very interesting game there. And plus, it's on the road, kind of like a trap game for Michigan. So we'll see what they do in that game. If they win that game, that's a boost on their resume, and they'll obviously go undefeated in that matchup against Ohio State. But I got Michigan winning out for the rest of the year and going to the Big Ten championship to win out, and I think I got them as well winning the Big Ten championship. So I got Michigan and Georgia here as my top 2 teams. And then my number 3 seed, I have this team winning out as well. It's Florida State. Florida State here at number 3. They obviously have been number 3 for me for a very long time. When I look at the rest of the year now for Florida State, I don't think they're going to, lose a game in the regular season. There is one game that I could see them potentially losing, and that is the game against Miami, their rival. You never know what can happen in that game. Obviously, Florida State could probably slip up in that game. But Florida State, if they win out, go to the ACC championship, they're obviously going to be in because they will play like a ranked team probably in their ACC title game. I mean, more than likely it's right now Louisville versus Florida State in the ACC championship. And I do have Florida State winning the ACC this year, so I think they do win out and go to the ACC championship, win the ACC championship, and also go to the college football playoff, and they'll get in there as an undefeated team. So I don't think there's, any concern for Florida State for the rest of the games here on their schedule. And again, Miami coming up, in about a couple weeks is definitely the game I think I could see them potentially losing. But I think Florida State's going to go undefeated for the rest of the year. This is a team that's been better than the first half of the year, and plus they have that win over LSU on their resume. So I got number 3 here, Florida State at number 3. And then my number 4 seed, no change here for me, but this is a team. This was like a tough call here for the number 4 seed. I don't really see this team, winning out for the rest of the year, but not going to their conference championship. But I think they can still get in there based off of the resume that they have. And I think, even though they lose their last regular season game, I think they're still going to get in regardless because of the resume that they have. So my number 4 seed is still Ohio State. Ohio State is number 1 in the real playoff rankings, but just because of the resume that they have a couple wins over Notre Dame and Penn State in the top 10. So if Ohio State beats Michigan, like I said, if they beat Michigan, they're going to win out and get in there as a number 2 seed. But if they go 11-1, I still think Ohio State's going to get in there as an 11-1 team. I don't really see a Pac-12 team getting in there. I think Washington and Oregon are going to at least lose one more game in the regular season, perhaps. I think Washington will probably lose their first game coming up this week in the USC, but you never know. Washington could probably win out. But will they put Washington in there, just based off of the resume? I don't really know. Ohio State has a better resume than Washington does. I mean, you look at the resume for Ohio State, like I said, they have a couple wins. I mean, Washington has a win over Oregon, so maybe they put them in there with the win over Oregon and then the rematch in the Pac-12 championship. I think they'll play a top 25 team regardless in the Pac-12 championship, and I think that probably puts Washington in there, but I think I'm going to go with Ohio State here. I think Pac-12, I think Washington's going to lose the Pac-12 championship. I think they do lose that game, and I think if Ohio State, goes 11-1, I think they'll definitely get in there based off of the resume that they have. So, again, it's very tough to call, though, right now because between Michigan and Ohio State, it's a regular season matchup between those two teams. As of right now, though, I'm picking Michigan to win it so far. But, again, these are my top 4 teams. Georgia, I have them winning out for the rest of the year. Michigan as well, winning out for the rest of the year with a win over Ohio State. Then Florida State, I have them winning out, going to the ACC championship, winning it in there. And then I got Ohio State as an 11-1 team. And like I said, I think they do get in based off of other conference championships. I don't really think a one-loss Big 12 champion will get in there based off of the resume, but we'll see what happens here in the final 4 weeks of the regular season. So these are my top 4 teams: Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and Ohio State. Georgia was ranked number 2 in the playoff rankings. Michigan was number 4. And then Florida State was number 3, and then Ohio State was number 1 in the playoff rankings. So let's get right to the predictions here. If these games were to happen here, we got Georgia at number 1 here, Ohio State at number 4. This is a rematch from last year's semifinal. It was a really good game. I still like Georgia either way here, though, because of the, just the dominance from this team. I think they have also the better defense than Ohio State does. But I still am going to pick Georgia. They were my pick to win the national championship this year, but I've changed my pick ever since. But, I think Georgia is still going to win this game. I think, it's kind of hard to predict against this Georgia team, and I'm still going to pick Georgia to beat Ohio State here. So I got Georgia winning that Sugar Bowl semifinal matchup. And then we got Michigan versus Florida State once again in the Rose Bowl. I still think Michigan is the more better team. I mean, offensively and defensively, you look at this Michigan team, they've been very consistent this year, and that's the reason why I think Michigan will win this game against Florida State if this game were to happen. So I'm going to go with Michigan here, and then I got Georgia beating Michigan in the national championship, so I'm going back to my preseason pick here. I think Georgia is going to turn into that dominant team at the end of the year. and I think they'll start to really dominate teams at the end of the stretch here. Because, of course, they do got a tough schedule. I mean, obviously, they got, of course, Tennessee to still play, Missouri coming up on Saturday, and then you got Ole Miss at home. So that is a tough stretch there for Georgia, but, I think they'll absolutely dominate the rest of the way. I don't think we're going to see the inconsistency from Georgia from the previous first half of the year, but I think in the second half, Georgia starts to look like a dominant team, and I think, after that Florida game, they look like a dominant team, so I think Georgia's going to win it here based off of, what they did to Florida. So I got Georgia winning it all still in the national championship, but these are my playoff projections heading into Week 10. Give me your thoughts on these playoff projections down in the comments below. Stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.